Well, good evening. This is Wednesday and it's map show time, and I'm excited to have you joining us, whether you're watching the recording or you're joining the live show. This is your moment to begin to grow and develop and become all that you were born to be. So tonight we've got an exciting topic, which is all about challenging beliefs. And Peter Darroll is going to be sharing some thoughts with us on that topic. We would love to welcome you sharing your comments during the session tonight. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube live streaming, please share your comments with us tonight. If you have any questions that you would like to ask of Peter or the panel, Janine and Colton, who will be in the panel with me this evening, please share that with us because we would love to hear that. So tonight, we are going to be talking about those core things called beliefs. And the best person in Map for Life right now to talk to us about that subject is Peter Darroll, and we're going to welcome him right after this.
Good evening, everybody. Wonderful to be with you. Map for Life changed my life. How did it do that? It was by challenging my beliefs. I was given a Map for Life as a Christmas present way back in 1999. And as I worked through it and I worked through the program, I sort of put some things down there. And one of the things that I put down in the book was under the category of spiritual, was that I wanted to find the meaning of life. I didn't even know what I'd put down there. But I was away in the Kruger Park when I wrote that. And I got back home. I picked up the local newspaper. And there was an advertisement in the local newspaper saying, "Do you want to find the meaning of life?" And that was the answer to the question I'd posed in my journal. And I immediately responded positively, and I wound up attending a course. I had no idea what the course was. It turned out it was an Alpha course. I was maybe a little concerned when I saw that it was taking place at a Methodist church, and I went along. It changed my life. And Map for Life has continued to do that. And I say it does it in three ways. It starts off with its methodology, where it's working through a set program, where it poses challenging questions. We then have an environment where we act with other people. And finally, we have a weekly Map for Life gem. And as I talk about it from the methodology point of view, it was a case of it helped me determine where I wanted to go and set out a map for my journey. But it's not just a case of putting down a map and saying that's it. It's like if you're a pilot on a long distance flight, you need to be constantly monitoring your progress and making adjustments. And over the years, I've made adjustments from time to time, adjustments that affect my beliefs, adjustments that affect my habits, And I just talk about a belief system that happened, only during this year. I was challenged to, and I've been challenged many times about fasting. And I just knew my belief system was such that my lifestyle was such that I could not fast. I had too many other things. But I challenged that belief. And I've taken up intermittent fasting. I've changed the way I do breakfast. And it's having results. I haven't decided whether it's going to be permanent or not, but it's experimenting with those beliefs on habits. Something again that I did during this year. I gave up taking additional sugar, putting sugar in my coffee. I gave up salt. And I found this a fascinating exercise. They talk about a habit takes, some people say 7 days, some say 20, some say 60. But I can tell you that I've been off sugar and salt for literally months. And I miss it in my coffee. I miss salt on my eggs. So it just helps me reassess my beliefs regarding habits and so on. But it's that sort of thing. As for the positive environment and the MAP Cafe situation, I think it's critical that we lock ourselves into a positive situation. It's been said that we become the average of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. So I think that is something that one needs to look at carefully. I also believe that where we will be in the future will be related to the people we spend time with. And then the final one was the question of the weekly gem. And there have been some fantastic gems. And this week in particular, the gem was entitled Cross the Line from Thermometer to Thermostat. And it certainly was not only thought-provoking, it was challenging. It started off with a quotation. The circumstances I face can be a calamity or a catalyst. It's a matter of choice. And we had a wonderful time this morning just talking about that statement. And I've just had occasion where, and I was sharing it this morning, of meeting people who've had gone through the loss of a loved one and the impact it's had on their life. But I also had occasion to be with a very dear friend of mine, Nikki Bush, who wrote a book called Future Proof Yourself. And she talks about this current circumstances and what she's been through. She talks about how the disruption that's taken place in the world in the last couple of years. And in her case, she had a family catastrophe where at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning, armed intruders broke into her home, and what she went through and how her husband was killed in this attempt, in this assault, and what it meant to her life. And she's written this book, as I said, Future Proof Yourself, and she gives a whole lot of tips. And she's got a whole chapter on dealing with grief and what it can do to you and how you can overcome it. And it's just, she shares an amazing story of how she certainly has gone from strength to strength, despite having gone through such incredible trauma. But I want to focus on the thermostat thermometer situation. And as many of you have heard me before, one of my passions is helping people finish strong or finish well. Now, I believe that if we want to finish strong or finishing well, it's critical that the second halves of our lives are handled properly. And we need to go through that. As a avid sportsman, so often the game is won or lost. I was going to say in the second half, but particularly in the last quarter. So it's important that we handle that. And this is where I believe that the thermometer and thermostat come in. Too many people are inclined to take the thermometer approach and just be passive and feedback, whereas we need to be a thermostat and make a difference in the world. One of the big things is that we've been conditioned by society to believe that we have to retire at 60 or 65, and then we must just relax, put our feet up, and in so-called enjoy life. We've been taught from an early age that we must be saving for retirement and pension. And I don't want to knock those because I think they're important. But I do strongly believe that the time has come for us to retire the word retire. The world has changed. And with this COVID lockdown period, it's proved it, and that we've been through some really changing times. We've also been through all sorts of technological innovations, and many of our existing beliefs are no longer valid. Retirement was introduced by Bismarck way back in the 1800s. And at that stage, life expectancy was something like 60 years of age. And this was introduced for the military and for people who were there and had gone past 60. And they sort of said, well, very few people will go past 65, so we will say you get to 65, we will do this for you. But today, I'm saying that life expectancy has gone on for something like 20 years more than it was 20 years ago. They talk about that 60 is now the 40. So my first challenge to you is to rethink your thoughts on retirement. I'm also challenging you to think about how you feel about older people. One of my favorite mentors is a chap called Richard Lader, and he's written a number of books on living the second half of your life on purpose. A theme done by Bob Buford in his series on second half. But Richard Lader, his project is to take students to a 3-week journey to Tanzania to learn about issues there. They go into, I say, darkest Africa with no technology, no watches, and the like. And the first 2 lessons are on what is the time? Not having a watch, how do you know what the time is? And the answer is the time is now. And the second question is, where are we? And again, not having a map, how do you determine where you are? And again, the simple answer is we here. So it's starting off dealing with living in the now and here. He then goes one stage further and he connects the people with an old, almost Stone Age tribe, a tribe that's up there that has not been affected by colonialism or the scramble for Africa. And they live in the time-honored ways. And they learn the wisdom of the aged, sitting around the fire. They learn how to respect the aged. Now, Richard Lader's client base is basically a North American or a European. But in South Africa, we've got Peter Leyburn, who's developed a leadership development program that follows a somewhat similar journey. It's an inside-out journey of discovering where we are meant to be in a world obsessed with what we do and what we have. Peter Leyburn reminds us that we are human beings, but we live in a world that encourages and incentivizes us to operate in human doing. I just think, as I think about these things, Glenn often talks about the two worlds that we live in, the so-called world we know, and then the kingdom. And my challenge to you is to think about these two worlds and think about what is the kingdom and what it means. The good book talks about seek first God's kingdom and what God wants. Then all your other needs will be met as well. So that's my challenge. Where is your focus? On the world system or on the kingdom? Thank you.
Peter, thank you so much for that message of inspiration and encouragement. And I trust that as Janine and I just talk a little bit about some of those things that you shared, that our audience are going to also participate. And if you're going to share a comment online, please tell us where you're from. I know that we have Nico who's joining us from Pretoria. Welcome, great to have you part of the show tonight, Nico. And we look forward to welcoming each person as they join. We have three panelists, two of which have taken a moment to restore their power in their regions of where they find themselves in Africa. So Janine, it is you and me. We have an opportunity to discuss what Peter has been sharing with us tonight. And of course, we had a wonderful opportunity to meet with Peter this morning. And so it's kind of continuing that discussion. Welcome. Why don't you just quickly introduce yourself to the audience this evening?
Okay, I'm Janine. I'm from Pretoria. I'm originally from Pretoria. I now live in Johannesburg. I was reflecting the other day whether I should move to Pretoria because I spend a lot of time there. I've been a Map for Life follower for a number of years. I would say from about 2011, 2010, 2011. And it's been an interesting journey. I took a little hiatus, and one looks back at those hiatuses with great regret because there's so much you can achieve in a short period of time.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Janine. And for a moment, I thought I've just put Janine from Johannesburg, and now she's from Pretoria. But of course, welcome. Good to have you joining us, and also to Octavia, all the way from Pretoria. So, Octavia, lovely to have you sharing your comments with us this evening. And then we have Audrey Modise. Audrey, I'm not too sure where you're from. Please share with us. Tell us where you're from. It would be lovely to share that with the group. Janine, I'm not going to ask you a question, but you've been listening to what Peter had to say. What thoughts did he invoke? What did he inspire as you were listening to his message?
Okay, there were a number of things that stood out for me. One of them was living in the here and now, living in the moment. I think when we worrying about the future or we clinging to the past, we literally don't live because we're stuck. Whereas if you live in the present, there's a scripture that says each day has enough trouble of its own. And if you live in the present moment and you embrace the present moment, you actually experience so much growth in moving forward. I always joke that I forget about month end and it slips by and I actually, oh gosh, I need to pay myself. and it's just because I'm so enjoying what I'm doing and what I'm experiencing. So that was quite stand out for me because it made a significant change in my life. We become the average of the 5 people we spend time with, and this is so true. If you change the people you spend time with, and look, a lot of people isolate themselves. I isolated myself for a while, and I must say that the more I connect with positive, different thinking people, I was thinking of our conversation this morning. It's not a conversation you will hear every day. It was quite deep and very interesting. So, yeah, I think your mindset changes because you challenge your thinking all the time if you spend your time around people that make you think. And not everybody does.
Well, you know what's exciting is you just as you were talking there, I was thinking I'm heading back to the same place we met this morning, and I'm going to be meeting with a group of people from Botswana in the next half an hour, and it's just maybe there's something about that place that evokes some kind of engagement. Before we continue, I just want to welcome Ngwadi from East London joining us tonight. So welcome. Good to have you part of the show, Ngwadi. And just for those people who haven't been on the show before, Ngwadi is a family friend. He used to often visit us on my father rather, on the farm. And I'm sure he's going to share some of his wisdom this evening. Janine, you were talking about that quote. I actually had it up there just now when Peter said, "What is the time?" And the time is now. And I was just thinking, how do we actually live in the now? I mean, how do we get to that place where I'm wearing a device on my arm that when I at my command it shows me what the time is, and at certain preset intervals it will vibrate my arm and say, Glenn, it's time for the next thing. How do we put ourselves in that place of just being in the now?
So look, there is still a place for planning and putting your day together and everything. So how I live in the now is I literally focus 100% on what I'm doing, no matter what's up next or what's worrying me. So, if I'm in a conversation with someone, I put all my energy, all my thought, everything is right there in that moment. I choose to forget about everything else and just embrace the conversation, embrace what's happening right now. I generally keep my cell phone far away from me, or if I'm working on a project or if I'm working on a deal or something, I will focus on that completely and utterly, for the time I've given it. And it actually, you enjoy doing what you're doing and you really enjoy your conversations, because if you're distracted, you miss half of what you're doing.
You've highlighted something really important, and I think it's kind of listening with your whole being as you're speaking, listening intently. I mean, this is what I was hearing you say. Listen intently, listen with everything that you have, as opposed to preparing your next answer. So while you're sitting with the person, instead of thinking about what am I going to say next, just listen and just be calm in that process, and you do that so well. Peter said something else, by the way. He was talking about. He asked another question, or he said, whoever the guy was, I forget his name now. Do you remember the name of the person that takes people to? Well, we remember the story. Stories are far more powerful than names. So don't worry about the name, Glenn, but always remember map. There was he said this over here, where are we? And the answer was here. And it's kind of, the time is now, the place is here. And then he said something else interesting, and it made me think of his favorite comment, which he didn't say it quite the way that he normally says it, but it was that claim your place at the fireside or the fireplace. And I was just thinking of those wonderful stories that I used to hear from my grandfather and my father and those people while sitting around a campfire down at the beach, and this is especially for Ngwadi, at the East London, near Kinsa, Ngwadi. We used to go down there for our holidays, and while we used to sit around that fire, some incredible stories used to come out, and I still remember some of those. And so, what are your thoughts around this claiming? I mean, when I say claiming as your place at the fireside, we didn't have a fire burning in the middle of the table this morning, but didn't that maybe feel a little bit like this idea of being at the fireside?
Yes, definitely. Because I think when you're at the fireside, you are more present. And I think the type of conversation we had this morning, I don't think anybody who was around us could have distracted us. I mean, we even forgot to order breakfast until much later. So I think it's like a fireside experience to be completely present. It's
What comes to mind? What comes to mind? When somebody's passion has been ignited, they have a fire burning within them. Yes. And when you sit next to somebody that has a fire burning within them, isn't that like being at the fireside?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is very well put.
I just think, I mean, this morning we're having a discussion there, and it's just so nice, because when you're sitting at the fireside, you have that warmness, that feeling of belonging, that sense of engagement. So I think that is something really exciting. There was a quote that I shared, or that was inspired this morning, and Peter asked, or in fact, he made a comment earlier in this discussion about that wonderful word, death. And we were also talking about the gem for the week of calamity and catalyst. And I think the quote that came out of that was something like, death is the ultimate catalyst for transformation. And so we talked a bit about that this morning. Do you remember some of the discussion points around this idea of thermostat and thermometer? Welcome back, Colton. I see you there.
So being a thermostat is actually changing the temperature around you and changing the world around you. And if you're not changing the world around you, a calamity may not be a catalyst for you, because you'll just remain in the same place and remain in. But if you move from thermometer to thermostat, as a thermostat, if you have a calamity, it can level you up and absolutely change your life. And sometimes the death of someone else is a catalyst for someone to say, I have a finite number of years. I need to make them count. Because you very often hear of somebody whose close friend passed away, and that triggered a change in their lives. Or, something terrible happened, and that became something, the beginning of something beautiful. Because you question, when someone close to you passes, you actually question your life. Are you living it as well as you can? Are you living it to the maximum? Another thing we said about death this morning is that death is actually the ultimate test. Because what you leave behind, will it remain, and will it grow and flourish even past your life? Because we were talking about intergenerational significance being intergenerational and not just for one lifetime. So yes, it was quite a deep discussion.
I was just going to say, you're at that place where you're like 1 minute away, 1 minute away from giving your first Map for Life talk.
1 minute.
You're doing great, and I just love hearing your input. And I see the comments coming on from Nika and Octavia that are part of the discussion this evening. And Nika's got some questions there which I'll need to take a look at a bit more closely just now. I think the one that he was talking about was leading in the here and now by a guy Skateman. I think it is it Itzko, but Skateman, I can read that well. And while you were talking there, there was something that Peter said which really just stood out for me in the moment, and that was the idea of finishing purposefully. I don't know if he used those words, but it ties in with what you're saying right now. Is having this transition from just going through the motions of life to suddenly saying, hang on, let me finish with purpose. And I think people who do finish with purpose convert the dash between the two dates on their tombstone into a multi-chapter book, or maybe a multi-volume book, because what they effectively do is they convert their lifetime into a lifeline. And that is something different, a lifetime versus a lifeline. And what I found very valuable from Peter's side is that I thought I'd passed the halfway mark, but I've suddenly realized I'm not even 20 years. I've still got 20 years to go to get to the halfway marks. So there's a lot of years ahead, Peter. So I'm claiming that lots more time. Colton, can I bring you in? Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and I'll pop you into the discussion. Great show. So welcome to Colton, joining us all the way from Cape Town. Great to have you here, Colton. And if the power situation just takes you out of the session again, I will bring you back in when it comes along.
I had to switch. I had to switch now from Telkom over to Vodacom.
Well, there you go. So
Telkom. Yeah, Telkom was a bit very slow with the something. So I switched over to Vodacom now. So I'll be. It
sounds like you're advertising now for two companies there.
Well,
Peter was saying something. Peter, I can see Peter because he's sitting in the studio with us. So right, the camera's just on, pointing in his direction right now. But I can see Peter, and he said this great statement. He said, "We need to retire the word retire." What are your comments about that, Colton?
But does that word exist?
Retire. You see, you must be part of Map for Life. And
no, man, the word retirement. The word retirement, my goodness, man.
Interesting. Go for it, Colton.
The word retirement, I think it's a figment of people's imagination, man. Where the heck does people still think of retirement, man? It's so joyful to have a very challenging everyday life situation, as opposed to sitting and retiring, and now all the things come to your mind. If only I did. Why didn't I that? Why? No, my goodness, man. Just go on with your life and just enjoy it. I mean, as I mentioned to you guys, my mom is 87, will be 88 in January. My God, you can't even talk about age and old age there, her side. So I think it's just something, and I don't know if you heard on the radio now, 702 Cape Talk this morning, about this gentleman that was forced to retire now at age 60. In the meantime, the company that he's working for admits to a degree that he is such a valid worker in the panel beating industry with his wealth of experience and knowledge. But unfortunately, the rule of the company is that at 60, you must retire. And he actually made a case against it, and it'll be very interesting to see what's going to happen, because apparently there's some legal eagles willing to sort of take on his case. So
Well,
I believe retirement is just something that people, I don't know, must somehow they just get out of their minds and just enjoy life, man.
it's a false finish line. I think, Janine, we mentioned a bit about that this morning. I see Ngwadi says retire must be replaced with refire. And we were thinking about refire, re-energize, revitalize, rejuvenate. I mean, all
That's right.
the REs that
That's
are there. And of course, what Colton didn't say, Janine, was that, and for those of you listening, they're looking for a boyfriend for his mother.
Oh, yes, 100%.
So, Janine, what are your comments on that, on what we've just said?
Yes.
Retire, the word retire.
I absolutely think we should retire the word of retire because, you know, if you look at the Bible, the concept of retire is he went to bed and he woke up the next morning and carried on. A lot of the fathers of the faith carried on working until they were old, and then they just blessed their family members to take over from them just before they passed on. You know, the Lord basically gave them, it's now time to give the blessing because you're now moving on to the next dimension. And so retirement is not a concept that comes from, you know, from our creator, because he didn't want us to retire. He wanted us to continue working because work is a blessing. It's a way of putting what is within us out into the world. And to tell people now you've got to go and pick up shells off the beach. I think it was you who said that this morning. You know, you're going to spend
that was Peter, because he was envying that person that can go and pick shells up on the beach. Of course, I'm saying that tongue in cheek. Yeah, there was something else that I jotted down here, and maybe it can bring about some discussion. I just want to go back to there we go. Peter was talking about this book that was written about future-proof yourself. And if we think about this idea, now I've not read the book and I listened to a little bit of what Peter said, but I was asking myself this question: what would future-proofing yourself mean in the context of Map for Life? If we think about Map for Life, in what way does Map for Life enable you to future-proof yourself? Colton, what are your thoughts on that idea?
Future-proofing yourself. Yeah, that is definitely something to think about, because we're living in such a challenging environment that future-proofing, to me, is just developing survival instincts and a survival mechanism. Because the only way you can be assured of a future-proof is by being able to adapt to whatever comes your way. And I think that is where possibly the more elderly folk are able to handle these type of things because of the experience and all the ups and downs that they went through. And so when I speak to a lot of youth and even young adults, and you just share some of the experiences, I mean, what it is to come to work on a Monday and just to be told that unfortunately the company is closed down and you are unemployed at that moment in time. There's some people that become suicidal, and then you get some future-proofed idiot like myself that said, right, what's the next step now? And then I approached the company and I said, look, can I take over some of your clients and customers? Can I continue servicing them because of the history that I've developed and built with them? And from there, I developed the company. And took one or two mates with me that was part of the company. And we did something quite great about it. But it unfortunately was due to the fact that you went through them all. And that is why when I have the opportunity to speak to parents and tell them, you need to let your kids go through some of the tough times, because how on earth are you going to future-proof them for what is laying ahead? I mean, there's guys who are 32 up to 45 still living at home by their parents. They don't know what to do. They're sitting there with the most fantastic qualifications and education, but they have got no idea what to actually do with their lives. And to a degree, I blame the parents. I mean, they were too pussyfooting around these kids. And that was a problem.
I think we're gonna need to start having a session for those young students. You know, Nico made an interesting statement. I don't know if you're able to see, Janine, what he wrote there, but we were talking about future proofing, and you know, what's interesting is that he mistyped something, but it was actually a good thought that I had, because he used the word future probing, and I was thinking, you know, in terms of Map for Life, we actually using this tool to look into the future in a sense and design that future so that we are able to navigate whatever circumstances happen, because there's certain things that we cannot see that arrive on our doorstep, but what we can see is the future in the sense of what is on our heart. What are your thoughts about that, Janine?
Yeah, future probing, it's an interesting one, because I don't think God is surprised by anything that happens. You know, you've studied your qualification and now you're sitting at home. I don't think that surprised God at all. And he's got a plan for each and every one of us. And you need to probe your heart to find your purpose and, you know, build your plan, and off you go. You know, it's and sometimes those very dark times, you know, I've got this qualification, the job is not falling into my lap. And that is actually such an amazing time of opportunity. It is, you've got a blank canvas to actually find out what you were made for, because obviously that qualification wasn't it.
You know, I was
try new things like I was just thinking of Octavia who climbed Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
She's just gotten back, and I mean, that's another thing you can do if you spare on ideas. It's a big challenge, keep you busy for a while, but
well, maybe, you know, I always had a dream of doing these kind of things as Map for Life. You know, we can go and organize. We'll get Peter to organize that special place in Tanzania. We'll go to the Here and Now, and we'll play our song. By the way, we have a song called Here and Now in Map for Life. we'll play the song. We'll get to the Here and Now, and then we'll mount Kilimanjaro, and go and see what things look like from the top. There was something interesting that Peter said, which ties in with a comment that Ngwadi just made. And I'm just wanting to find it. I wrote it down here because it was kind of, what is our attitude to, I used the words wise, because Peter was talking about older people. And I was just thinking that there's many people that are going to be listening to this recording this evening who may have family members that are in their later years in life. And the question that's on my mind right now is, are you too busy to spend time with your own parents? Or is your attitude towards older people based on the way they look on the outside as opposed to the wisdom they have on the inside? What are the thoughts that we need to think about? What should come to mind, Colton, when we're thinking about people as old as you? I'm joking. I'm thinking about, you know, you were talking about your mother, and there's so many people that look at us, the three of us on the screen, and saying, you know, do you still have a mother? Do you still have a father? And of course that's changing. But what advice can you give to people just briefly, in terms of how we should engage with people that are older than ourselves?
Man, it is such a wonderful opportunity to have a living book of life exposed to you. The input that you can get from the elderly, aged. I always say experienced. I never use the word aged and elderly, etc.
Great word.
Yeah.
The
I
experience.
always say experienced because, like my dad always says, you associate with people that can be of benefit with you, knowledge-wise, experience-wise, creativity-wise, etc., etc. And what a pleasure or a privilege is to be able to spend time with elderly people, experienced people, and just to be shared their perspective about certain things that happen. What does become a little sad is when the reality of what's happening today, in comparison to their times that they lived, is a bit heartbreaking when they sort of comment about it and they speak about those good times, etc. And now the reluctance to even want to walk around these days and the dangers and the protection continuously and children that unfortunately, being kidnapped, etc., etc. So those are some of the sad things that comes along. And then I thank God for the opportunity that a character like myself, with humor and all, can slowly but surely get that type of negativity to sort of be put on the back burner. And as God is my witness, what a privilege and a pleasure, and how fantastic it feels when you leave a person giggling or laughing because of something funny you left behind. It is so amazing that you will even find. Now we have a situation that we go to some elderly aged home places, etc., etc., and we go and spend some time with some of the elderly and so forth. We even visit hospitals now and then also. And I'm telling you, Glenn and panel, these people are craving for just a bit of attention. And it's amazing the wealth of knowledge that these people have. It is so fantastic.
Carlton, what you're saying right now is that I caught myself realizing that when I step into a retirement facility and I go and I'm engaging with the people, I'm looking and I'm seeing old people that are young and young people that are old. There's 95-year-olds that are helping the old people, and the old people they're helping are 65-year-olds.
That's
this kind of thing. But then I was just thinking for a moment. I've had the audacity to go into that environment, to go and give a talk, when maybe what I should be doing is going to just listen. And what you've just said right now is just going to have a cup of tea and sit in the presence of people who have been along this journey before. Maybe one of the best therapies that we can have, and possibly we should start doing things of that nature. I just want to quickly welcome Tanya all the way from Mauritius, who's joining us this evening, and she was saying, if I can read this carefully, she said, everything that is studied or invested in indirectly prepares you for your next step. I think she was tying in with the whole Map for Life theme. Janine, what are your comments about this situation of engaging with those people who are our age and older?
Speak for yourself. But I find that older people, now my grand's two sisters lived to 104, and they were always a fountain of wisdom for me. They always gave you new insights on life. And a number of years ago, there was a group of elderly, I don't want to call people old, wise people that started what they called elder wisdom. And you could write a letter to them and ask them for advice. And three wise people would send you a letter with an answer, and I sent a number of questions to them, and I got my 3 answers, and all of them worked so well together, although they may have been very different. And I can tell you the best advice I got was from the Elder Wisdom Circle, because they have lived life and they've seen life from beginning to end. And I think the rest of us are sort of limited to the span of life we've had. And older people have also experienced different journeys, like wars, which a lot of us have never even been exposed to. And the Great Depression, some older people also were exposed to that. And we're looking at something close to the Great Depression. We actually have a wealth of wisdom waiting for us in elder care facilities. And these are people who have lived it and done it successfully and actually brought a turnaround and brought us into where we are today. And I think people that disregard older people definitely are missing out, because they've got the full circle, they've got the later picture, they've got the earlier picture. You know, people who have started businesses and grown them and maybe passed them on to the next generation. You know, it's foolishness to miss that out.
Janine, you said something just now, which, and I hope I was listening carefully, because as you were speaking, a comment came in from an old friend. When I say an old friend, she isn't old; she's my age. But Mary from who I met in the early 90s in Zimbabwe, and who left to go and live in the United Kingdom, shared a comment, and she talked about the experienced people with a wealth of wisdom to share. She's referring to the older people are really worth listening to. We need to take time to listen to them. But you were talking about actually writing to them. And I just thought, what a wonderful idea as a new habit, that those who are listening this evening, maybe pick a retirement center, maybe pick an orphanage, maybe pick a foster care home of some kind, and let's start writing words of encouragement to people, because that's going to evoke an engagement, an interaction. You don't have to, you can do it anonymously. Maybe that's even a better way to do it. But just do something that's going to make a difference in someone else's life. And you inspired that thought in my, not in my head, in my heart this evening. Thank you for sharing that. Our time is already up, guys. It's amazing how quickly it goes. So what I'm going to do is ask you just in 30 seconds. There is a clock on the screen, so you might be able to see it. In 30 seconds, what was your highlight this evening? Your take home. Janine, why don't you go first?
There are too many for me to say one, but I think my big take home is be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Make a difference. There was yeah, let's stop there.
Colton, you were ready. You were ready for that 30-second shot.
Retirement is a figment of your imagination.
Retire the word retire, isn't it?
Retirement just does not exist. And as I said, look, unfortunately, circumstances forces people now to think in that direction. And those that feel that retirement is just a figment, we should just thank God for that privilege to be able to know that there is a, what was that future thing you mentioned earlier? You said something? Future proof. Yeah. So those of us that says retirement is just a figment of people's imagination, we are on the verge of future proofing our existence and blessed time we are looking forward to on this earth.
fantastic panel. It's been wonderful having the night, sharing the evening with you. I'm going to go and continue my discussion at Stephanie's this evening, where we met this morning, and go and meet with an exciting couple who are going to go and change Botswana. And I'm going to, Peter, I just want to bring you in to share one last thought with us. I hope I'm not going to catch you off guard, but let's bring Peter in just to share one last thought. And after that, I will play an outro. And thank you so much to everybody who's joined us this evening. It's been wonderful having you with us. It's really exciting to see the global connect that we have. Peter, let's hear what you have to share from listening to the panel this evening. Your final words.
Just thoroughly enjoyed the evening, and I'd just like to close off with what Carlton said about future-proofing the future.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. See you next week, Wednesday, same time, same place.
Cheers.